evening. This is the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting. This meeting is now called to order. Today is Monday, January the 13th, 2025. I am the chair, Councilmember Michelle Harley, for the 4th District. At this time, I will call the roll for those members of the committee first. Councilmember Letitia Bracy.
Present.
Councilmember Shanae Darby. Councilmember Alexander Hackett.
Present.
Councilmember Xanthia Oliver. Councilmember James Spadola. Council President Trippy Congo.
Here.
Councilmember Chris Johnson.
Here.
Are there any other council members on the line?
No.
Councilmember Oliver, I will mark you as present. So as a friendly reminder, I want to make sure that we all know that only members of the committee should be making motions and seconding. So at this time, I want to welcome everyone again to this meeting. This is our first meeting for the 109th session, and we are going to get started at this time. We only have one item on the agenda on this evening, which is Ordinance 25-001, an ordinance constituting Amendment Number 2 to the fiscal year 2025 operating budget, being an ordinance to amend substitute number 1 to ordinance number 24-016. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to the sponsor of this ordinance at this time, Council President Congo.
Thank you, Chairwoman Harley. Before I get started, I would like to introduce our Chief of Staff, Elijah Simmons. I would also like to thank everyone who has joined us in council chambers, former Mayor Baker, and also everyone who is with us virtually. I believe that all of you know about my passion for education. And I believe that most of you, if not all of you, share that same passion, that's the same concern that I have. You know, our schools, our state ranks 45th in the country out of 50 for education. And less than half of Wilmington students are testing at grade level in math, and only 26% are at grade level in English. These numbers are not just statistics, not just numbers. They represent our children, our families, our community, our futures. You should all have received a letter from me earlier today about the details of the proposed Office of Educational Advocacy. So I just want to take a moment just to highlight why I think this is so critical. Right now, there is no single institution that focuses solely on Wilmington students, whether they attend public, private, or charter schools. While we do have organizations like the Wilmington Learning Collaborative and the Reading Consortium making great strides, they are not permanent fixtures. They rely on agreements that can end at any time, leaving our kids and families vulnerable. The Office of Education Advocacy will allow this council to have a consistent, proactive voice in the education of our city's youth. It will give us the tools to not only address the challenges our children face today, but to also help shape a stronger, more equitable future for education in Wilmington. This budget amendment I'm proposing tonight is just the first step. It's going to give us the resources to begin building this office, starting with a director, a consultant, and an administrative assistant to ensure that we can hit the ground running. This isn't about duplicating efforts. It's about filling gaps, amplifying voices, and taking action where it's needed the most. I know that we all want to leave a legacy that makes a real difference in our city, and this office is an opportunity to do just that. So I urge all of you to think about the impact that we can have together, not just for the children who are in our city today, but for generations to come. Thank you, and I look forward to your support and discussion on this critical initiative. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to, with your permission, Chairwoman.
Yes,
I
Mr.
will allow Dr. Kendra, our Legislative Director, our Legislative Research and Policy Director, to give us a slide presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Kendra Brumfield Nwangna, the Legislative Research and Policy Director for the City Council. And so I'm just going to provide a very high-level overview of the Office of Educational Advocacy, how it's different, and just a brief overview of Phase 1 and what that looks like. So if my presentation is...
And Dr. Kendra, before you get started, I would also like to recognize State Rep Namdi Chakocha, who was with us virtually.
So I will just get started when WITM brings up the presentation. Hopefully it will coincide. So what is an Office of Educational Advocacy? So this is something that the research team spent some time looking at other offices of this nature that serve as connectors. And so the Office of Educational Advocacy would serve a few key concerns. It would develop strategies to identify and address concerns of students and families residing in Wilmington. This language is important because there's no, at this point, institution that focuses specifically on all Wilmington students, no matter where they go to school. It would build strategic partnerships with stakeholders in the educational landscape. So that involves parents, guardians, students, and also those organizations like the WLC and Reading Consortium that have been in the educational environment. It would lead sustained advocacy for Wilmington youth and provide council with guidance on developing lasting legislative change at the state and local level. So this would include advising on quality of life issues that could impact the learning environment. So there are some key things to note about the existing organizations in the educational landscape. This PowerPoint covers 3 of the main organizations. One is the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. Currently, the Wilmington Learning Collaborative serves 9 participating schools under the agreement that the school boards and school districts, it's at their discretion what schools participate in a learning collaborative. The Reading Consortium also serves City of Wilmington and also North Newcastle students, public school students. And there's also the Parent Information Center, which provides some resources for youth, but they are a broad organization that provides those resources for all Delaware public and charter school students, as opposed to being specifically focused on Wilmington. So the lifespan of these organizations, oh, and I'm sorry, the Office of Educational Advocacy, the goal would be to serve all students, whether they're going to city schools, whether they're bused out to other schools, but to be a point for making sure that all Wilmington students have the resources they need. So for the Office of Educational Advocacy that's being proposed, the lifespan would be ongoing, meaning that it would be in legislation and something that continues outside of a single administration or council. The Wilmington Learning Collaborative is contingent on annual extensions, and how that works is that they renegotiate agreements with each school district annually, every academic year. The Reading Consortium is in this enabling legislation, is in operation until the governor and the General Assembly deem that they fulfilled their mission. The Parent Information Center is ongoing. So for the Office of Educational Advocacy, the mission, this is a simple high-level version, is supporting progress, advocacy for remarkable kids through learning and empowerment. The Wilmington Learning Collaborative, their mission is to enhance student outcomes within City of Wilmington schools. So that's to say operations within the classroom structure. So the Reading Consortium is much broader. Their goal is to reconfigure Wilmington school districts and school district infrastructure. So they're looking at high level, the organization of schools. The Parent Information Center, their goal is to improve health and educational outcomes, but it's through case-by-case management, meaning that when a parent comes in with a student, they treat that as an individual. They don't necessarily collect public data to show how concerns are evolving over the years to be able to change that mission or adapt to students' needs. And again, specifically, they cover the entire state, not just Wilmington. So next slide, please. So what's being proposed is a phase 1. In this pilot, it would have a director. The role of the director would be to lay the groundwork for an institution that can be sustainable and ongoing. So for the consultant role, that would be technical support, meaning organizing research and data to help them build those priorities out and decide what's most pressing and what's appropriate for council to be able to address. For administrative support, that staff member would handle the day-to-day activities, scheduling, making sure that they can build those partnerships. So if you'll notice at the bottom, there are short-term goals, which include identifying resources, identifying challenges and opportunities for improving the educational experience for constituents, again, across schools, and acquiring key stakeholder buy-in, which is why this is a phased approach. So the long-term goal would be to develop those strategic partnerships and sustainable activities to provide ongoing support for Wilmington students in the educational process. And that would be including the initiatives that exist, making sure that legislation is proposed that can ensure that those things are entrenched in law and not just at the preference of whatever administration is in effect. So if anyone has any questions. Yes.
Thank you, Kendra. This was a very good summary and overview. I'm glad to see that we were able to provide some of the detail that is going to support this office as well as the position. My one question I have is that when I heard how we plan to support and to interact, now how do we work with the state representatives, to make sure, that we're working, in a collaborative fashion in terms of what we identify, what we see are some of the issues as it relates to, who's going to take the lead. And I know we probably can talk more about this offline, like some of the micro details, but I think, just understanding that the state pretty much has the authority and the budget as it relates to education, that would be, one of my, not a concern, but just curious in terms of like how, we determine like, do they go first? Do we go first? Or do we, work with them to try to, number one, share what we have identified, share what we see could be the next steps, because I think this goal is a good goal. I think, what we're planning to do in terms of advocating and supporting, it sounds great. And as it relates to us answering the call, because, the call did come to us. It has been coming to us over the years. City Council, what is City Council going to do? What are we doing? And then most recently, when State Rep Namdi and Senator Lockman came. We had the committee of the whole where they shared their vision in terms of how they were going to move forward. We were all there as a council, and so I definitely see what you have shared as city council answering the call. So I know that was a lot, but as it relates to like the green light and who's taking the lead.
So this is a very broad, high level, but, and President Congo, feel free to chime in, but I guess the simple answer would be that it works both ways, meaning that, again, the committee of the whole meeting, there was the call that they need support in making sure that people understand that people in Wilmington support what they're trying to propose at the state level, and also in the sense of engaging parents locally, you get an idea, an ongoing idea. What are the concerns? What are parents coming to the office for? So things that may not hit the radar at the state level right away, this director is seeing this on an ongoing basis. People are coming in for educational planning. Maybe it's a disciplinary issue, but they can not just take these case by case, but compile them. So now there's evidence of these are the needs of the community, and keeping those top of mind. So in both ways, and being in those conversations at the state level with this data and evidence of what's going on in Wilmington.
Awesome. So we're another level of support. Basically, we're going to be that next level of support for the community, for the students of Wilmington.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from council? Council Member Bracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions / concerns. I think my first question is, are we even confident that there's enough work around this for a full-time staff position? I'm not sure if this is more of a part-time or a consultant position, or if we're advocating and we don't have control over education. Really, all we can do is relationship build, do kind of an ecosystem analysis and identify who the key stakeholders are for the city, which I think is important work. But then what else is this person going to be doing? Are we going to have this person working with the education committee? Are they going to be looking at what the administration is going to be focused on around education? Are we going to be, like, how do we justify a full-time position when we're limited in scope of what we can actually do as far as what the expected outcomes are going to be? And I think that's another question, like clearly defining what the outcome is. Okay, we all agree that we need to engage in education and advocate, but to what end? Like, what is the outcome that we're seeking? Are we trying to move the General Assembly to action? Are we trying to get more parent engagement? Like, what exactly is our role in this? And I think there may be some more conversation that we need to have around flushing that out. And then that can determine whether this is full-time, part-time. Because I think there are some needs, like before and after care, after school, like where does that fit into all of this? And that might be an area where the city could actually move on supporting our community centers and making sure that we're strengthening after-school programming. So, I'm wondering where all of that fits into what we're thinking about.
So I would say most in the educational setting, most people are moving towards what's called the whole child approach. So that's saying not just what happens in the classroom, but their environment, their community, where they come from. All these things are important. And keep in mind when it comes to WLC, our Reading Consortium, yes, they're working on the classroom, but it's council that has the overall purview of talking about things outside of where a kid's coming from. So in those terms, I don't want to get too specific on the task, because I think that would be a director who is competent and who you trust to do this job would have to set those specific priorities. But that's just to say that beyond just the classroom things, there are a lot of quality of life issues, and especially translating what's in practice, because much of the research on education is meant for educators. It's meant for principals and directors and school boards. It's translating that into legislation that lasts. And that's not something that is just second nature. By looking at, there's this discipline problem in the school. It takes time to see how do we make a piece of legislation that addresses that effectively and appropriately. So I would say that short of having, and one of the things that would happen is that council would be able to help give those priorities. So it would be council's purview to make sure that this position is worth it and that this office is proving its worth instead of just a consultant that's there on a part-time basis.
Thank you. Follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. So thank you. That was the answer I was looking for. I wanted to make sure that it's clear and on the record that this isn't just about what's happening inside of schools with educators, but also looking at what the quality of life issues, because if we're looking at this from what City Council and the City of Wilmington can actually affect, I think we do need to explore more of that whole child approach. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson?
Yes, I appreciate your presentation, Kendra. Thank you. And I guess my question really is looking at the past. So I know back in, I believe, during the Williams administration, that the administration had an education officer, Dr. Jackie Jenkins. So I don't know if you looked at previously what has been done, and so we learn from the mistakes of the past looking forward. So that's the first question, Kendra. Were you aware that there wasn't, during the Prizicki administration, there was not an education advisor? During the Williams administration, there was. Are you aware of that? And did you look into that past?
Yes, so that's one of the issues just in general, not even just that specifically, is you bring out an important point, is that one administration has this, the next administration doesn't. So on the council side, there's legislation that can make sure these things are entrenched, that it's not at someone's whim to decide if we need this or not. So one important thing about this office is coupling not just the implementation part and initiatives, but making sure that the initiatives that work stay. Even at the state level, there are some things that the education is at the state, but there are some local things that have to be done to facilitate and create the environment where those changes rest. So that's one important part about it, is with the state level and the local level, we see some things changing by administration, is that this office would be designed to try to kind of try to, I guess, rectify that in the past.
Oh, and a brief follow-ups.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it seems like the intent is to make a new office. So at least the first fiscal year would be under City Council, and then I guess the idea, Kendra, is to then expand to a bigger citywide office, because the way I look, and then this is getting into the weeds, we can talk about it offline, but
Right.
It's under City Council now, but kind of like violence prevention, I think it's a citywide issue, so we would need to almost make an enabling legislation so we get a new department with a new department head and then go from there. Is that the intent to get there?
I would put that one to Council President Congo. I don't think that's above my pay grade.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you. Thank you. I know President Congo had his hand up.
Did you want to?
Yeah, just a quick one.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam.
Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. Just want to make a comment. I guess I can see what President Congo is trying to do. And so many conversations has been around what can we do in education, but we got to start somewhere. So I think this is a great start. I think the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, we have a great partner. I think there's an opportunity for a great partnership for us to be able to tackle and help these kids in Wilmington. So,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilmember Hackett.
Councilmember.
Council President.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. No, this would be a department under council, not under the administration. This would be under council. And I guess I want to really thank Mayor Baker, of course, who is always he's the education guru. and is always just dropping knowledge on me and other council members and on an entire city around how important education is. And I think that also a council member, Newcastle Council member Jay Street is with us virtually. So I want to thank him because he has, since I've been on council, he has constantly reminded us that we are one of the only bodies, one of the only councils in the entire country that has no say-so of how our children are educated. And that hit home. And the last time that it really hit home for me is when we had that committee of the whole meeting, and he was there, and State Rep Namdi Chikocha was there, and Helen Anderson from the WLC was there, and Dr. Burgos was there, and they just really were asking for our help. And again, this is just the first step to being able to be at the table. We know that the state controls the money. We know that the state controls education right now, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can have a say, and I think it's up to us to make sure that we have a say. I think that when we are campaigning and just being an elected official, I think that we would want to have a say in how our children are educated. We want to make sure that we're getting it right. So I completely understand the questions and the concerns, but I hope that we are able to come together and make this office extremely impactful and something that lasts beyond our years. And it's going to take a while to get it right, but again, this is just the first step in being at the table and making sure that our children are prepared for the future and the present. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to say this, Kendra. I believe that you did some research as it relates to the office, this particular Office of Educational Advocacy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you were able to identify pretty much what the framework should look like. And I think that is what you are presenting on tonight, what the framework should look like for an office and what some of the goals should be. So we know that this is not the first Office of Educational Advocacy, and I do appreciate the fact that you did your research and you've always done excellent job with research to come up with this framework that we are starting off with. And I really feel like, maybe some are feeling like, this is it, but I think this is the framework. And we will continue the conversation with the main stakeholders, with our educational experts, or the Lewis Reading Consortium, the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, and there's other educational experts that are out there that I would think that we are going to continue this conversation, and we will get their input, we will get their feedback to make sure that we are on point as it relates to creating this office. So I guess, again, I'm just saying, I hope for those that are listening that this is the framework that we're starting with, and that this is going to be a conversation that is going to continue. So thank you. Council Member Oliver.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have to admit, I was receiving some calls, and I was a bit confused myself from the initial conversation. But after I heard from Councilman Harley, who's the chair, President Congo, it was very clear that good communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity. And my sister says that all the time, and I was confused. But I was able to talk to Mayor Breaker, former Mayor Breaker. I talked to Councilman Harley, President Congo, and I received some clarity. After, I was on vacation. Everybody was on break, so I have to be honest. I wasn't clear on this whole scope because it just sounded like we were just doing any and everything. But me personally, I was here when Nomney, Jay Street, Donald Patton, and I even talked to Tizzy Lockman, Senator Tizzy Lockman, and all of them are honorable. Besides Jay, I don't really mean to minimize their position, their titles, but I do get the concept of it all. If anybody's involved with education, we all know that we are below the level. Minorities, and it's sad. That's why they are collaborating with trying to get rid of Christina and collaborate the other two school districts. But I'm not going to really elaborate a lot. But I think if it's anything we can do to help our youth, majority minority kids that we're talking about in the city, and they're not all minorities, they're of all colors, because I work with them. I had two Caucasian families a day I helped get placed somewhere earlier. So everybody is having issues with education because of COVID, single families, food gouging. It's just a lot going on in the world. So, but the bottom line, the numbers speak for themselves. And I don't think that, it takes a village. So I know this is John Corney's pet, Mayor John Corney's pet, but I think we can all work together because it takes a village. And the area that council is working on, I went and met with Tanny today, Chief of Staff, and she, after we had a conversation and talked to Mayor Baker, whatever, she understood that everybody's not doing the same thing. So you can have an apple over here, orange over here, apple, 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 but it doesn't mean that everybody's doing the same thing. We don't have the scope that maybe John has for what he may want to do, but all of us working together collaboratively, we could come up with something. And if, council, if the president wants to get involved and try to assist, it's not just black kids, it's all kids, and all of us all the kids in the city, the statistics show the kids in the city of Wilmington are low unless you're going to a charter or private school. So it's not all black kids in the school. I was at Bancroft today, I was Bayard the other day. They're all running around the buildings, and we need help collectively. So for that reason, I was confused, but for that reason, I'm going to be supporting this piece of legislation. And I've been saying this for the longest, for 8 years. Good communication is a bridge between confusion and clarity. And it only takes us to meet and have a conversation. And I'm not going to get into it, but for this reason, and I do see where the mayor has like 6 or 7 positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and nobody's talking about. And for us as council members to be, constantly, combating something in our office, which is a good thing, I find it rather sad. And it's all about communication. And like I said, I was confused at the beginning, but until I talked to the chair, I talked to the president, and some other members on the finance committee, that we have to stick together, and we have to just listen and talk to each other. There's nothing wrong with, lack of communication will kill everything. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Oliver. Councilmember Owens?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I just want to say thank you to Council President for bringing this forward. I think all of us sitting up here and people who do their research on the state right now know that our education system is failing our kids and have been for a very long time. I did want to just echo one thing. So when you're looking at our numbers in our inner city schools, in which we do not have any say over as of right now, we have multiple schools in this city that are at single-digit proficiency in ELA and math, right? But also what Councilmember Bracey mentioned, the after school and before school, making sure that we're working with all aspects of a child's life is going to be critical over these next few years. We have allowed for these kids to fall into a gap for way too long, and council can now start by taking the right step in the right direction by filling those gaps and helping lift our kids up and help them on their educational journeys. My question to you, though, is this enough? Is one full-time position as a director and an additional support staff, is that enough to actually start doing a deep dive into the true social economic needs of our students here and their families as well too. Especially when we're looking at, we had less shootings this year, but we had more murders. So when we're trying to prevent youth violence, when we're trying to also bring new businesses here and develop new workforces, it all starts with a young child's educational journey, right? So is this enough to be able to start to make a difference, or will maybe next year we have to come back here and expand this?
Excuse me, that's great. I wanted to allow President Congo because he wanted to make a comment earlier, so I wanted to turn it over to him, and then we'll go back to answering that question, Councilmember Owens.
Okay, I will take a stab at that for that answer. That question, Councilmember Owens. Absolutely not. I think that, and Councilmember Bracy touched on it earlier. This position is going to be this office is going to be extremely busy. There is no way that one person with 2 part-time people can even begin to address the needs and filling the gaps of our public school system, and especially those who are live in Wilmington and go to public schools in Wilmington. So no, I think this is a great first step. I don't want to overreach. I want us to get a good handle on it, and I want it to be impactful. And one of the first things I said when I wanted to establish this office is that I don't want it to be just another group. I don't want it to be a feel-good group. I want us to hold our school districts accountable. I want us to hold our Board of Education accountable, because we're tired of our students not being proficient. But we have to take our time and make sure that we get it right. There are going to be a lot of critics. And I understand the concerns from council members, but I think this is an awesome opportunity for us to, if we work together and if we're able to talk and communicate and we're able to bounce things off of each other and collaborate, this can be legendary. And again, I just want to thank those who are on virtually with us. And I do want to give Helen Anderson and Councilmember Jay Street and State Rep Nnamdi Chukwucha to be a part of this meeting. I think they do have some presentations that they want to give. I don't want to slight any council members, but I appreciate them for taking time out of their day, and I appreciate them for even asking for help, and them seeing and them knowing that we need to be at the table. And I think through the conversations and through the presentation that they're about to have with us will help council members and the public to know how critical we are, how critical it is that we're at the table as a council.
Thank you, Council President. So we're going to turn it over to some of the individuals that are tuning in virtually. And before they speak, again, this is a framework, and we know that there are going to be a number of areas that we are not sure of right now, but that's part of what the director is going to do to make sure and identify if it's aftercare, if it's going to the schools. Like right now, we know there's a number of things and there's a number of areas and things that play into these outcomes with our children. We know that, but that's the point. We're trying to get to helping to solve the problem. And you have to start with identifying a position, to identify someone to help us to get to where we need to go, so we know exactly what we need to do. So having said that, I think I want to turn it over first of all to State Rep Nnamdi, because he was one of the individuals that came and basically shared the call to action to and with City Council. State Rep Chukwucha, it's yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and President Congo, for the invitation to be involved this evening, first and foremost, and all the members of council who are present for the Education Committee. Just wanted to thank you. Thank you for following up on our meeting. As was noted, we had a call to action. We really feel that we can do so much at the state and the county level with Reading or WLC, but we need the city involved. And it's one thing to have a mayor who's keenly involved in education, but it's separate, something totally separate when we think about a city council, and city council in particular, because it's city council that focuses on policy. City council creates the laws and initiatives. And I'll give one perfect example of why this is important. You think about every one of our partner school districts right now, and our 4 districts in the city, each of them have a representative from the city of Wilmington. That wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for Wilmington City Council, in particular, Newcastle County Councilman Jay Street working with Sam Guy and others, and we created that legislation and was passed, and that the state had to mandate that we have that member. It's the same thing that we're talking about today, about your body using your legislative strength, using this office to focus on policy and policy creation. We talked about before school and after school programs. You can create legislation saying that it's mandatory that all of these schools in our city have before school and after school programming. Send that down to Dover. Then it's our job to find the resources for that. That's how I believe this office will be most beneficial, not looking at the micro level, but really thinking about the meso and the macro level and high level about how we can work together. And it is a lot of work, but the one thing that's keen to me is that they're not working in a silo. They're working in partnership. They'll be working in partnership with the new mayor's person on focusing on education. They're working with WLC. They're working with Reading. They're working with Newcastle County. So many initiatives that are focused in Wilmington, but this office will give City Council that direct involvement, and I think it's so crucial. Everyone can talk about our children, but honestly, it's only one body that can do something about it, and that's Wilmington City Council, because anything that we can do in Dover, we need it from you. We need a piece of legislation. We need a resolution passed by your body that comes to us so we can pass it on the floor to help bring forth these changes. It starts with you. So that's why we're saying that it's very critical and important for you to be involved. And it's not so much of thinking about individual families, but really thinking about our communities, thinking about our schools and our city on the whole, about how do we turn things around. It's most importantly for us to have a true person that's focused on policy, focused on direction and improvement in how we bring all of our parties together and just being that voice, being that voice. And I think this is a great first step, and for us to learn from the initiatives of the past. We know former City Council President Theo Gregory, he had the Educational Voices initiative where they were advocating. It was more about individual families, but that was one approach. But I think this isn't about individual families. This is more about collective and more about us as a city, how we begin to advocate for our direction as a city to change. We fought for years. I mean, since 2000, the first report came out 25 years ago saying that Christiana should leave the city. And for these 25 years, we've been struggling to do that. And it's mind-boggling that we haven't reached it yet. And we're getting there. We're getting close. We're Reading and other initiatives in order to make that happen. But we can't do anything in the city without the city. We need our city to be involved. And it's great that we have a new mayor who's keenly focused on education. But we need council to really understand its role, its duty, and its obligation. These are our children. They're not Rick Clay's children, Clono, Christina, Brandywine. These are our children. And when we begin to accept that as a mandate and charge, no one can tell us that education isn't in our purview. Man, whatever. We can't accept that. We can no longer accept that, because if we don't step up and fight for our children, no one will. So again, I thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. President, for really accepting the charge and just stepping up to be partners, because the WLC needs your partnership, Reading needs your partnership, our county needs your partnership, and we at the state level really need the city of Wilmington, both the administration and council, to step up and be just willing advocate partners to hold us accountable, hold yourselves accountable, and all of our district partners, everyone involved. Because in order for us to change this, it's going to take each of us doing our part, working together. No one individual group, Reading can't do it alone, WLC can't do it alone, council can't do it alone, the mayor can't do it alone. We all have to work together. So again, thank you, and I really look forward to what's coming forward. I know this is a great opportunity for us to begin to change the narrative for our children, for our families, and for our cities.
Thank you, State Rep Chicocha, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Do we have Council Member Jay Street on the line? Council Member Jay Street?
Yes, ma'am.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. And I don't want to make a bad situation worse, but I just want to share with you how I see things. And I'm gonna go back 50 years for a second. When we realized as a city that we were going to have a school desegregation order, the city took the lead in the litigation. The city paid for outside counsel to lead the litigation. And when the litigation was over, the city no longer played a role. And from that point forward, that's when things began to get to the point where they are now. And for far too long, the view was that the Coalition to Save Our Children, which represented the children in the litigation, Coalition to Save Our Children, Judge Williams, and we're going to take care of it. And we tried, but the court order has been lifted since 1996. And since 1996, there has been no real effective representation coming from the city. And in my opinion, and Councilman Owens, he talked about proficiency and one-digit proficiency coming out of these schools. Well, you know, we used to measure proficiency in science and social studies. We don't measure that anymore because all those numbers were basically coming out to zero. And if you look at all hell breaking loose in Christina and everybody hating the school board, but the fact of the matter is there's no district in the state of Delaware with worse performance scores than the schools in the Christina School District in the city of Wilmington. And if in any other jurisdiction, those schools, and if the state board had the power it used to have, those schools would have been closed or taken over by the state board. But I'm looking forward, and my concern is, and I know some of you agree, but the governor-elect asked me, what did I think about a Wilmington school district? And I said, the city of Wilmington cannot properly fund a city school district solely with the tax base in the city of Wilmington. It's not going to happen. Well, suppose we change the funding formula. Well, suppose you do. But when you create a Wilmington school district, we have a proliferation of charter schools in the city of Wilmington like nowhere else. And when you create a Wilmington school district, then the new school district would be the city of Wilmington. They have to take on the city would have to take on the local share of for the cost of charter schools in the city of Wilmington, and it's just not going. That's not going to work out. And my whole point of that being, this is going to require some offense and some fighting and perhaps some litigation. You know, we should have representatives fighting for our kids at each and every school board, all 5 of them. We should have representation going down to the General Assembly and lobbying on behalf of the city, and if it can be done on behalf of City Council and the Mayor's office together, that's wonderful. But we need that, and we need to prepare, because the only protection, the fact of the matter is, the only protection that, well, let me say this. The state of Delaware is a state, with the exception of the early childhood education initiatives sponsored under former Governor Minner and continued through the Markell and Carney administration. The only initiative that the General Assembly has done without a judge ordering them to do so. Everything else that has come about through litigation. And I think we need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that we may have to, as a city, litigate once again on behalf of our children. I don't want to monopolize the time, and I don't want to regress, but to me, this is very, very important. And Councilman Congo, Mr. President, you're absolutely correct. I have been saying for the past 20 years, Wilmington, Delaware should no longer be the only city in the United States of America where the city as a city has no responsibility and no authority over the educational destiny of its own children. It's been outrageous, and if we don't act, the city doesn't act, it's going to continue to be outrageous. And I just hope that we can find a way to get this started, pass it, hire staff work with the mayor's staff, and we start doing the things that need to be done in terms of protecting our children and making things better for them in the schools that they go to. And right now, with substitute teachers being the front line and all hell breaking loose with fights and things not going well in school, those entities, we need to fight for things like having interventionists in the school to change and modify behavior. All those things need to be advocated for. And the districts themselves need to fund some of these things. So it's a lot to talk about. It's a lot of work to be done. And I just hope we get a start with this tonight. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Council Member. And we do look forward to continuing the dialogue. And before I check to see if there's any other questions, I want to just say that I don't think there's a debate if this office is needed at all. I don't think there's no debate about that. I do believe that the council members, especially those that are present, believe that this office is needed. I think that those of us just want to better understand City Council's role in all of this, which is very legit in terms of what will our role be. And again, I believe it starts with having a director in place to begin to start unpacking what does it look like for City Council to be involved. And I don't believe, that we're going to figure all that out tonight, but I just want to underscore that's where it's going to start. We have to get started somewhere. And this legislation, voting on this legislation is putting that person in position to get started for us to identify exactly what that looks like for Wilmington City Council, because we fully understand our lane, but how and what that looks like, I think, is the big question. And I think it's not going to be very hard for that to be identified. So thank you, State Rep. Thank you, Council Member Street. Is Ms. Anderson on the line? I think I was told Ms. Anderson.
I am. I'm on. Hi.
Hi, welcome.
You all hear me?
Yes. The floor is yours, ma'am.
So I am not going to add too much more than what both my uncle and my brother spoke to. The only thing I can say is from the Wilmington Learning Collaborative side, our goal is to do exactly that, bring all these 9 schools together. But we have so many children who are either choicing out going to charter schools out of our city, but they're still our youngest constituents. So I think all of us working together to get this office created, get it moving, will give everyone a voice and everyone the ability to be able to come and speak to what is actually needed and what's best for our families and our students and our youngest learners in our state, or in our city, I should say. So I think the best thing to do, was to hear this out and to come, and I'm glad everyone's coming with open minds. I know when President Congo and myself, when we had some conversation, it was merely about trying to ensure our city, which lost its voice, as my uncle just identified 50 years ago, is now able to have a voice back, at least that can be heard and only focus on this educational piece and what we can do to better fix it. So I just applaud the efforts so far of this council. You all are starting off strong as far as we are concerned, and we are excited about partnering with you to get this work done. So I thank you, I appreciate you, and I will not hold any more time because it's all been said. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Anderson, and I appreciate each one of you chiming in on this topic, because we all know that you're closer to this work than we are. State Rep, Councilmember Street, and Ms. Anderson working with the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, and State Rep working with the Lewis Reading Consortium, and then of course Councilmember Street just being a longtime advocate as it relates to our education and how it relates to the Wilmington schools as well. So again, thank you. So Council President, I'm going to find out, do you have anything else to say?
Before my final comment, I would ask if Mayor Baker has any comments. Is that okay, Councilman?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think you're on course to doing what has to be done sooner or later, and that is the city finding a way to save our children. And there's plenty of ways that you can do that. We had a mentoring commission, and we got 500 new mentors for our kids. So there's things that city can do without worrying about bumping into this, that, or the other. You have a scholarship program already. You can expand that. You can do all kinds of things. Early childhood education needs to be an absolute necessity for young people. So you go on and on and on without bumping into the restriction of you don't have a say in education personally. You can do a lot of things without bumping into the boards of education and all like that. But I think eventually that's going to be a battleground that will probably take place, but down the line. But you have to get started, and there's no way that one person is going to handle all of this. We know that it will have to grow into something. And looking for funding could be just beyond the city itself. It could go to foundations and other places and corporations for funding for this. So I think that you should be proud of yourselves for doing something that hasn't been done, literally. And Mr. President, I think it's a leadership role that you're taking here that needs to be done, and I appreciate what you've done. And I appreciate the council members for stepping up and doing something that's very difficult to do, really. It's not going to be easy. And there's plenty of opposition out there. You don't have to worry about that. But these are your future. A lot of people don't know. I taught at Del Tech, and I can't tell you how discouraging it was to watch these students come out of the Wilmington schools thinking they were prepared to learn at a college level. And they knew absolutely nothing. They didn't even know who the president was during the Civil War. I mean, it was just mind-boggling to watch these poor kids try to face up to things they do nothing about. They should have known by now going into college, all these kind of things. And it was frustrating as could be to watch the damage that had been done, because now they're adults and they have to compete in an adult world. And they didn't have the capability, as far as I was concerned. They could not read, not only understand who I asked who the president was. And I got every name except Kennedy. It was just amazing. So I appreciate it. You're doing the right thing, so don't worry about it.
Thank you, Mayor. We always appreciate your valuable input and feedback, and more importantly, your experience, especially in this space. Before we go to the public to see if we have anyone in the public that have any questions, I'm going to check with the council members here if anyone else have any other questions. Council Member Bracy.
I just wanted to, I wasn't sure if we were doing that now, but I know the administration may have some information on the other pieces of the legislation.
Oh, yes, but I wanted to make sure that if someone in the public had something to say about this before we go to that.
Okay, all right.
But thank you. Okay, do we have anyone in the public that have any comments that they would like to make regarding this legislation regarding the Office of Educational Advocacy? If not, Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we, Madam Chair, that we stay on Ordinance 25001. There's nothing else on here that should be discussed. I mean, if it was on here,
Right.
but
Yes, that's the only one that we're
that's
talking
it,
about.
so-
Yeah, that's the only one.
that's it.
That's the only one.
Stick with that. That's I'm gonna call point of order because there's nothing else on here.
Right, yeah. That's the only one that we are talking about. And, yeah, so at this time, I wanted to make sure, is there someone else out there? No. Council President Congo? Are we
Yes.
ready to move on?
Yes, I'd just like to give a closing statement. If that's okay. Madam
Yes,
Chair?
sir.
All right. Again, I just want to thank those who have joined us virtually, State Rep Nnamdi Chikwocha, County Councilman Jay Street, Helen Anderson, Mayor Baker, and especially my colleagues here on council, just for understanding the need. And we're not going to, we don't know all the answers yet, but I think as we work as a team together moving forward with everyone who has an interest in educating our children, politically and those from the community, I think that we are going to get it right. I think that we have to get it right because we haven't gotten it right for so long, and it's time for us to say enough is enough and hold those who can make the changes that we were talking about this evening, hold them accountable to make those changes. So again, I just want to thank my council colleagues. I look forward to working with you all to make sure that this office is impactful, that it's just not another office, that it's not duplicating services, that it is not going along just to get along, that we are having those uncomfortable conversations with those in Dover. I think we're going to rely heavily on our community. Our community is going to have to show up at our meetings. They're going to have to show up in Dover with us. There's going to be a fight, unfortunately, like that has been mentioned over and over, because it's not always the will of politicians to do the right thing for Wilmington. So it's going to be a fight, and we're going to need our community members to show up and to come with us in Dover to demand change. So again, I just want to thank you all. I look forward to learning from you all. I want to thank council staff who has just done an absolute terrific job of preparing for tonight's meeting. Just making sure that we have everyone's concerns addressed and that they are just as excited as I am about moving forward and making sure that this office is impactful, if nothing else. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President. So at this time, we have two other departments that are included in this amendment on tonight. And so I'm going to ask the Treasurer's Department, if there's someone here to come and speak on behalf of the Treasurer's Department. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening and thank you. Hello, Madam Chair and Council President and distinguished members of Wilmington City Council. My name is Alfred Lance and I'm the Deputy Treasurer for the City of Wilmington. And today, this Office of City Treasurer has put forth two changes to position titles within our office. We see these as largely housekeeping items. We're looking to change the titles to our positions to bring them closer in line with the job responsibilities and that they perform. The first change is to our pension manager position. We're looking to change this title to the retirement benefits and pension manager. This is to reflect the more comprehensive view that we're looking to take with regard to retirement in the city of Wilmington. Our second position is our debt and cash manager. We're going to be changing that position to the cash and investments portfolio manager. Once again, looking to bring the title of this position in line with its job responsibilities. Given that these are only title changes and that there are no changes to salaries, there are no fiscal impacts in this current budget year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lance. Before you take your seat, I'm going to ask if any council members have any questions. Do we have anyone on the line that have a question for the Treasurer's Department? If none, thank you, Mr. Lance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move right on to the administration. Please come forward and introduce yourself for those that will be speaking on behalf of the administration, which is the last department that's included in this amendment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Kevin Kelly. I am the chair of the Mayor-elect Carney's transition team, and I'm here this evening to present some of the changes to the proposed budget. And part of the reason I'm here with Stephanie Mergler, who's Deputy Chief of Staff. There are some moving parts with staff that will be starting at some point in the future that we hope to have everybody on board, probably by the beginning of February if everything lines up right. So I was the one who was probably integral in some of the discussions about where we're landing today. So therefore, I'm going to present the information to council members. If you don't mind beforehand, I'd like to congratulate Councilmember Owens, Councilmember Wilhauer, Councilmember Hackett for your first Finance Committee meeting, and Mr. Simmons for his meeting. And Mr. Baker tells you that my motto was to raise hell and have fun when I was on council. Just say. But with that, we have a short overview, but just basically there are 6 positions that are being deleted. Four being deleted, 6 added, but we'll go through this presentation and then I'll be glad to answer any questions that council members have. So if we could start the presentation.
Next slide.
The next slide, please. So the deleted positions are the Neighborhood Development Director, the Best Practices and Innovation Specialist, Special Assistant to the Mayor, and Administrative Assistant position. And the reason we chose to delete positions, it was easier with HR to delete positions and add new ones rather than trying to change this position from this to that. So that's what you'll see. So these are the 4 positions that are being deleted. If you go to the next slide, these are the new positions. There's a Special Assistant for Community Engagement, a Constituent Services Officer, Director of Community Engagement, Director of Special Projects, Executive Assistant to the Mayor, and Mayor's Office Receptionist. Within those 6 positions, there are really 2 new ones, the Constituent Services Officer and the Mayor's Office Receptionist. So they are really the 2 new ones. The rest kind of equal out, swapping one title for another title. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. There's, as the Treasurer's Office we have a couple of technical corrections. There's a Special Assistant for Community Engagement. The class is EO3, but it really is EO4. There was in the budget, it's not correct. That's exempt 03 to 04. There's no change in dollars or anything, just changes that pay grade. Then the mayor's salary increase is going from $123,000 to $185,000.
Ooh.
Just as some context on that, mayors only receive a pay increase every 4 years. Mayor Pazicki did not take an increase from the last one from 20 to 24. So his salary has stayed the same. So the goal of this is to bring the mayor's salary in line with the chief of staff. They would be close to each other's salary. And I think that's been the discussion, some that I've not been part of, but that is the basis for really where that's at. The next question is the fiscal impact. So this is the fiscal impact. It shows all the positions that are involved. And these are 6 months cost because we thought this would start in January. Probably some might be right away, some delayed. But you'll see where the positive numbers are, we're adding those salaries for those positions, and the negatives are the 4 positions that we're deleting. So that's the end up total there is about $137,000 for the changes that we were making within this proposed budget amendment. And then there's one more slide on the end that talks about the just no changes. Could you go to the next slide, please? And these are notes. So the digital and social media manager would go to Deputy Director of Communications. There's no, just as a treasurer's officer, we're just changing the name to put them more in line. And then the office manager, administrative assistant's job title would be Office Manager, Director of Operations. and there's no change in classification or salary with that one. So that's basically the items that we're bringing before City Council for approval in the budget amendment that's included in the one that you have in the Treasurer's office. I'll be glad to ask any questions anybody has.
So my first question is this, Mr. Kelly.
Sure.
So these new positions that are being added, they have not all fully been fleshed out, is that correct?
Ed, being flushed out?
Meaning, do they know exactly what they look like?
Yes.
Most of them?
All the six positions, we know exactly what they'll be.
Okay.
Even the 4 new ones, we know exactly what they'll be doing.
They know exactly,
Yes.
okay. So maybe it just hasn't been shared, because I definitely asked that question.
Well, I would be glad to provide a detail or summary to council of the functions of each of the positions, so you guys can look at those.
That would be great.
That'd be fine.
That would be great.
That's
because
fair.
I did. Okay, and I do see that the net of what you're adding, what you're deleting, is the 137,543.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And it looks like a big chunk of that, as you had mentioned earlier, is the mayor's salary is being increased.
Correct.
Right, okay. All right, so it makes sense here to me anyway. Any other council members? Council member Congo, President Congo, Council member Oliver, and then Council member Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Mayor Carney and his transition team for understanding the importance of constituent services and appointing someone to handle that, to be over that. You know, we are all inundated with calls from the community who just wants to know how to get help. So for you and your team to be able to address that is I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I think one thing that Mayor Carney heard loud and clear and I was with is the need for constituent services. Where people are concerned about 311, which is something that we'll be looking at. I think council members at time being on there for 20 years, and Jim will say, there's a lot of time spent on constituent services. Really is the role of the executive body of government to resolve those. Yes. And we're hoping with the new person, we can look at 311, hopefully get folks back out to community meetings where they're at community meetings, gauging people, understanding what the needs are, and also through the neighborhood engagement office as well. But we thank you for that, council member.
Yes, that definitely was a need. Being out on the ground, going to civic association meetings, it has been not a big challenge, but listening to the community and then having to translate the information, back to the administration has really, been very, like I said, it's just been taking more work. So if we have someone now from the administration that's going to show up at these meetings, I think hearing it firsthand and being able to take it back to the appropriate department heads, I think that is definitely going to be a big win for the community. So I agree with our council president. That's definitely a great upgrade.
And I think I'll add on, there's other questions. You'll see the mayor at more meetings. You'll see Mayor Carney at more meetings, being out there in the neighborhoods to engage individuals.
Awesome. All right. Councilmember Oliver?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I too would like to speak towards the constituent service officer. I know it's in the charter for us it's mandated to have a constituent service office. So I'm glad to hear that it's going to be a constituent service person, I guess, in the mayor's office. But I will hope that they will work closely with the constituent service. And I have to say this, back in the day, when I used to come in the building and work with the Eastside Civic Association, constituent service was very busy. I remember Arthur Scott, Miss Marsh, it was a line out there. And now, for some reason, the previous mayor had diminished or didn't take advantage of constituent services, to be honest. And so we developed this 311 call, which has not been very effective. This is just my opinion. Most people, I've talked to John several, we're on the calls, I've been on the calls, neighbors, constituents on there for 5 and 10 minutes. I found it very mind-boggling that we created a 311 call center, and now that you're here, I want to say this publicly, that wasn't very effective. Most of the people that called individuals, they were from out of town when it first started. And they didn't know where Poplar Street was. They didn't know where the Highlands was. They didn't know where Delaware Avenue was. And I just kept complaining to various council members. And I never liked it because we had, and Kevin, you know this, you know, we had individuals who was over Public Works, this constituent service office here, and everybody knew what street they were talking about. And then we got into this mode that, you know, we called 311, and you can't even, as council members, you call and you hear a recording, and I couldn't get through to half of the departments, right? So I don't know who came up with that great idea, and it was a flop. So I'm just saying this, and Kevin, you know, we've talked about it. And
I'll make a comment on it later
yeah,
on.
let me finish, because this is my opportunity while you're here as a transitional director. I did not like the 311. I still don't like it because it's not effective to the residents of the city of Wilmington. So now we have 311 individuals who work down to the train station, and I walked in there because Heather told me where it was, and I met it's about 8 of them or whatever, and maybe 2 was from Wilmington. And I just think we need to go back to, sometime if it's not broke, it don't need to be fixed. And I see a constituent service here. I'm not going to call no names, but them young ladies are working hard up there. They used to work with NCPs. They used to do a lot. And for some reason, the past administration just shut it down. And I think it's unfortunate, and I'm hoping, and I'm saying it publicly because I did speak to Mayor Carney about 311. We need people to answer the telephones who are from Wilmington or who are from but live in Wilmington, who know about Wilmington. They didn't even know where Ray Street was. They didn't know where Broome Street was. I mean, I had people calling me, arguing. I mean, after they called 311, they're madder than what they were disappointed. They just talk about the trash. So I'm done with it, but I wanted to make that a public announcement. As I've said it in several meetings, I've shared it with the incoming mayor and the outgoing mayor, that 311 system needs to be repaired. And that's all I got to say. I mean, I'm done. This is I just had to mention that because constituent.
I'll come back to that.
I'm just relating to constituent service officer.
No problem.
I mean, I think all of them up there need a raise because it's ridiculous.
Thank you, Councilmember Oliver. I'm going to go to Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you.
And then Councilmember Kelly.
Just going to be just brief in terms of the appropriate administrative steps. I believe this is right in line with where we came in with 108. You see where you need to put change some players on a team, and you change that team up. So I think you have a good team coming into place, especially again the neighborhood engagement.
Yes.
You know, you all have heard counsel on that. Because a lot of time it is lonely when WPD's been coming to meetings, but we're up there on the firing line and there's no one else from administration, at least the way it's been the past 8 years. So I appreciate that, and I think if we look at big picture, there's some other department changes. Probably can look at it the bigger budget, especially in regards to public works, planning department, having the actual NPC liaison, but that's for a different day. And but lastly, 311, I think what we're finding is a divergence. There's a need of 311 to be app-based, computerized, which I've had many constituents who love that part of it, but then the phone system seems to need some work. So it's kind of two different worlds, because if you're under 25, you're not probably calling in, you're doing it on the computer. And I've found I've actually put it in myself on a computer. It actually seems to work. Like when it comes to potholes, different sidewalk issues, that system works well, but the phone system's not. So I think it's a work in progress, working with your transition team, and of course Stephanie Mergler working on that so that the telephone is as good as the computer-based portion.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Mr. Kelly.
So we hear you loud and
respond.
clear. I think it was another one as we were out. I think part of the challenge with the 311 was internal. that sometimes the departments did not put information in. So if Councilmember Owens had called about an issue on a block and someone went out and addressed that information wasn't put into the system, and when you called back again, excuse me, it was just nothing was done. I think what you'll see from the administration is really looking at 311 and all the stakeholders involved, and some conversation with council about how do we try and move it forward. We've had some conversations with Ms. Mergler, because you have a system that's, you were at the blind site where you were at, Councilmember Oliver. That's the individuals who are kind of visually impaired. We have a contract with them. We have the Public Works kind of system that sits out here by itself for special pickups. I think that works sometimes pretty good because you get a call back. But we're trying to take a look at it, how best it works. There are a lot of people involved in 311 and in government sometimes. The more people you have, the harder it is for the customer at the end of the day to benefit from it. But I think Mayor-elect Carney, Mayor Carney now, hears you loud and clear about 311, and hopefully there'll be some movement, possibly in the 26 budget, to address some of those issues.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other council members? Councilmember Owens.
Hello, yes. I wanted to talk about the constituent service officer real quick. I think it's great that you're adding to that office. But I do know one thing that has been raised is having an individual who can speak multiple languages in that office. Has that been taken into consideration?
We have go ahead.
So right now we have contracted with Integrity Staffing. We have a lovely individual in the office right now who speaks Spanish fluently. But that is absolutely a concern of ours, is making sure that we have somebody who's more responsive to our non-English speaking residents.
Thank you.
And just as a follow-up, in the Office of Neighborhood Engagement, one of the the special assistants for neighborhood engagement that we hope to bring on board is fluent in Spanish. I've impressed that the mayor that the city is changing, and a lot of folks speak a certain language, and you have to be prepared to address that. So I think that is one help as we move forward, to be able to make sure that people who speak different languages, English, Spanish, whatever it is, have some ability, somebody understand what they're saying.
Thank you. Councilmember Owens.
And just a follow-up, I would also like to add in Haitian Creole is a very highly spoken language here in the city of Wilmington. So I know it's hard sometimes, but again, trying to make sure we're accessible to everyone.
When we were doing the ACP program, the access to the internet, we had a lot of folks that were speaking that. So we appreciate your comments.
Any other council member?
Yes.
Councilmember Oliver.
Yes, in closing, this is a very close topic to my heart. I've sent several emails, and I just want to reiterate and keep it real short and simple. 311 is not working out. We have a lot of empty buildings, talking about Generating Avenue. We need to, I had emailed someone in administration. We should be, utilizing one of these empty buildings around here and hiring some individuals from the city of Wilmington, residents of the city of Wilmington, if we're trying to, hire. I mean, we're doing a lot of building and, and improving communities, but what about employment with individuals in the city of Wilmington? And constituent services seems to be one of the big topics around here, since we hired all these people from out of town, and we have all these people from Wilmington who are looking for employment. Why not pick one of these small buildings that's vacant, that doesn't cost a lot, and hire some individuals from Wilmington and train them like Jim Baker did years ago for the DoubleTree, because I remember my cousin is still working up there. She's been there for over 30-something years. That building was empty. He said, look, we're going to hire people from Wilmington when DoubleTree came in town, and they hired them to do housekeeping, et cetera, and most of them either retired or still there, and it's ironic that he happened to be here tonight. So I remember that because 2 of my family members retired from there, and I still have one there, and she's about 60-something. But find one of these buildings, hire people to do constituent service, making phone calls or whatever, and hire people from Wilmington. I just think we're so fast to bring in contractors and hire people from out of town, but we're always talking about, residents of the city of Wilmington and constituents, but we talk about it, but do we live by it? So I just wanted to, say that for the record. Constituent Services 311 is not working well, and we need to be hiring people, and that's not a hard job, for people to answer the phone and transfer or take a message for the various departments. And I think that's wrong to have 311 for individuals from out of town, and I'm done.
Thank you. Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this legislation before we call for the vote? And I want to call you Councilmember Kelly.
Once a council member, always a council member, as they say.
That's right. That's right. So, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to present here, and I know, speaking for the mayor, he looks forward to work with council, especially through neighborhoods and how do we improve neighborhoods. And education was a big topic here this evening, and I'll speak personally as an individual who's had a lot of time in education. With that, I say this all the time: if we put as much effort into education as we do crime in the city, we would have a much stronger city and we would have less crime. And I think that's something, a commonality we all share together to try and make this city better, and especially for our young people who are the future of the city, and trying to take a look. And there can never be enough resources anywhere in neighborhoods, education, wherever they may be, to make this city the greatest city that it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you very much. So we want to just thank everyone that shared your input on tonight, in the audience, Mayor Baker, and all of those that shared feedback. So at this time, President Congo, I'm going to take the roll. Do you have any last remarks?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So this is an ordinance, and it has to be voted out. And so at this time, I would like to take a motion to move out of committee Ordinance 25-001, an ordinance constituting amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 2025 operating budget, being an ordinance to amend substitute number 1 to ordinance number 24-016.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so there has been a motion to move it out, and second. So at this time, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. This particular ordinance will be on the agenda on Thursday, January the 18th. So if all, January the 16th, oh, should have my glasses on. January the 16th, this Thursday. If all hearts and minds are clear, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Oh, yes, motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, yes.
Yes. Second.
We could just leave. Okay. So move.
First meets in the books. There we
Yes.
go.
Just leave.